I'm going to use this for this, just so you know. Been a very busy week actually for me. I want to do something just a little on the lighter side, so I figured I would do that. I'm going to make very quick like rail, like Starfox style. I thought I'd show you how we can do that. Now in the newer Unity versions, Unity's bringing in a spline system, which is great because once it comes in and everything gets settled, there'll be Playmaker actions, I bet, for it. If not, I'll probably make some myself to control splines. Until then, I'm going to take the other method and use Cinemachine for its spline. Now you don't technically have to use splines, so now we could do a path with vectors and just use an array and it would actually work just fine, but it's harder to visualize that, so I think overall it would be easier to use this system here, and I'll show you. And it's really easy to use, and it's very visual. I'm just going to make it material because I don't like looking at this blaring white ground. I'll just, give it a bit of groundness to it. And then, let's make another one while we're at it and do like a building. And the building can be like more of a concrete style color. And then I can just make a few boxes. So, to make the track, it's actually really, really easy. I'm just gonna, go to your package manager, and we should have this, and this is gonna pretty much do 90% of the work for us. And all we're gonna do is create a track with cart. Right, so we have a cart, we have a track. So the track, I'm going to drag up here. If I was smart, I would have zeroed everything off, but hey, whatever. We're going to stick it over here. Now, we don't want it too high, we want it kind of so we're floating in the middle. So that's our track. And we can start, somewhere in here. And all we got to do is just say add point. Go to our points, and you see how we can click on these points now, right? So we can just bend them, move them. You can rotate them and stuff too, right? And as it goes, we're just gonna move this thing around, right? Go down a little bit, make another point. Right? Because now we have this beautiful little path. Like I said, you can go and you could adjust individual parts wherever. Maybe that one's getting a little too close, right? You can kind of do whatever. Now, this track, we can run it off of various things. We're gonna go with distance. So we have a speed and a position. And if you watch the position, if we move the position, he literally just flies along that track. That's really all we need to do, because we could call this the player. We can take our camera, drop it in there, let's zero everything off, and then take our camera and just pull it back. Let's go like -7. Alright, so now we just need an actual player object. So if I have any spaceships, I should. I got all my Cinti stuff in here, I think, so I should have Cinti space, which means I should have a Cinti ship. Something like that guy. And of course it's massive. I didn't make the track very big in the ways of scaling, did I? So let's take the player and just bring him down. That'll look a little better. And I'm going to leave him at zeros. Zeros for position and rotation. So just that alone won't actually move. What we need is an FSM here. Now there is no action for it. You could easily build a custom action for it, but I'm just going to drag it in and do a set property. And we want to update the position. And we'll give it a variable called position. And now I'm just going to add a float add. If I spell float right. Float add position every frame per second, and we can just add whatever we want. And that'll be our kind of our speed that we're flying through the level. Is this amount. It doesn't seem like very much, 0.25, but that's because it isn't very much. Right, and if I speed it up a bit, would be a good speed. Maybe 5? No, a little faster. How about 8? 8 might be a good speed. Now, now obviously we'd have to adjust the path there so we don't have the clipping into buildings. We don't want that, but as you can see, I mean, it works pretty damn well so far. So let's just default that to 8. I'm not going to bother fixing the path. You guys can do that if you want. So what about the actual moving and the maintaining of from the spline, like moving from the spline, I guess you could say. So I'm going to build one more object here. I'm going to make it a 3D object for now. I'm just going to call it the target, and I'm going to put this out like 20-ish from there. Now I'm going to go to the fighter, our actual player ship, and I'm going to add an FSM, and I'm going to, now there's numerous ways to do this, because we could be checking the camera's frustum and trying to stay in that and various things. One of the ways I find that's just an easy way to do it is, now I'm using a gamepad. Now I can still get axis vector if I wanted to, or if you wanted to, either or. Now because I'm using a gamepad, I literally could just use the stick values as well. I could just say left stick and give me a vector. Either or will work. Right, like I can say stick value, and this one's a vector 3, so this could be, see, if we watch now, it's turn my controller on. Stick value is a vector 2, doesn't really matter, but as you see, like I've got input on both, right? Because it might be the stick value, but it's also a horizontal and vertical axes. So either way you go, it really doesn't matter. We just want the input. Oh yeah, so we have the input. We have Excuse me. We have the stick value. Now, how do we move the character based off of the spline itself? And all I want to do is screen to world point. Now this is where this method is going to be probably a lot different than most other methods you'll see, because a lot of methods we're going to move the ship and we're going to clamp it to the screen, and in the method I'm going to show is we're actually going to use the screen's positioning to move the ship. And to me it seems a lot smoother and nicer. It adds some extra benefits. So we need a vector 3. So I mean, I guess I could use the other one. So the screen vector is, I don't know how much you guys deal with screen stuff and vectors. So 0 and 0 is actually in this corner. And if it's normalized, then this is 0, 0, this is 1, 1. Right, so this is 0, 1, 1, 0 type of idea. So it's not 0, 0, 0 doesn't sit in the middle. It sits in the corner. So if we have those values, actually, you know what? This is actually a lot easier with the get axis vector. Oh, it will be for this anyways. So we have the input value. Of course, one's a new input, one's the old input. So if we put this every frame, I'll show you what this looks like. Now I could actually use a keyboard or the joystick for this. It really doesn't matter. I mean, I like the joystick, but we have this vector, and I forgot to add a set position. Set position. Every frame, I'm going to go world. So we need a world position vector. World position. Because that's what this guy's going to give. He's going to give us a world position. Now there is a Z factor, and if you look at the Z vector, it's going to be based off of more or less the distance between the ship and the camera, which we know the ship is at 0, and the camera's at -7. So I'm actually going to take this to 7. That's like the distance between them. That's kind of what this is going to represent. So there's some issues. A, we're at 0, 0, right? And apparently I don't have it up. Oh yeah, right. Let's go to the ship here. So here we have left and right, and it's super fast, it's snappy, and we're down in this corner. So that's not cool. So we need a way to fix that, and we have to get it up. So the one thing we can do is we can actually times it by 0.5 and swap this to XY, and we're now going to move half the distance. And half the distance, that might not make much sense, but now we have the XY, but we're sitting over in the wrong side of the screen. But we're dealing with normalized values. So to get to halfway, all we got to do is vector 3 add XY. We're just going to come up here, up before the screen to world. We're going to take our input value, the one we're pulling off of there. We're going to add 0.5 and 0.5 every frame. Because now, adding the 0.5 with the 0.5 multiplier lets us sit defaultly at 0.5. Now left, right. Right, so now that's very snappy, very, very quick. Obviously. Now, the reason why I like this method is because if we let go, it goes back to 0. A lot of the other methods, if you let go, it just stays wherever it is. And maybe that's a preference, I don't know. But I like it when I let go, I'm going to go back towards 0. But this is obviously way too quick. Like that's insanity. So how do we fix that? How do we fix that? We are going is instead of the vector, let's not use a vector here actually. Like we'll use it here, but we're gonna get axis vector or get vector 3 x y z, and we're gonna break some of this down. So the input, we're gonna have an input x and an input y, and we're going to do that every frame. Now I'm going to get rid of this, and we are going to add, so we're just going to use float adds, because we still want that 0.5 happening, so we want it after we pull it out. So the input x we add 0.5, input y we add 0.5 every frames. Alright, so now we have these two x variables, right? So we could technically, we could use those, right? But we don't want to do that. There's an action on the ecosystem. So if you go to the ecosystem, right there, called float smooth damp. That's what we want to use. So we have, if the current is going to be, say, we're just going to call this one X, and the target is that input X, right? And I can now copy and paste that, and when the current is a new variable called Y, and the target is input Y. So now I can use the X and the Y. So what we get is a much slower smoothing effect. Now, timeline, it's just a matter of how snappy do we want our character, right? Like if we take this to 0.5, and let's go the opposite, going the other direction. Let's go 2. So our Y should be snappier, right? That's the speed of our Y. Our speed of our X is like this, right? So the Y is starting to feel pretty good. So we're going to take this one and cut this one in half of the Y. That's starting to get too fast. That's alright. It's a little fast, but that might be pretty good. It's kind of preference at that point in time. So let's go 0.45s. There we go. Now we have, this is how it feels now. Now we have a much smoother feel. Alright, that's feeling pretty good. So if I let go, we do that, kind of go back towards the middle. Alright. Cool. Let's add one more little detail here. Let's smooth look at. We'll have ourselves look at our target. Ignore the vertical. Speed 5, finish tolerance 0. And that should just add that little bit of a little more of a rotational feel to it. Like it'll be relatively slight. Now we can move that target around. Now you could move this based on a fraction of our movement, but I think it would almost be better, especially in my case right now, I'm using the joystick, to actually use the joystick for that. right? So you know what I can do? I can just copy this whole actually I can just copy the whole FSM and paste it on the target. Now there are some differences because we don't want our screen to world point. We're no longer 7. We're actually much farther, but we may not want the ball to actually move the whole distance, right? So, and I'll show you the difference. If I go 5, I forgot to do. Yeah, set the. All right, so it doesn't need a smooth look at, and we got to set position. Oh, set position boner. Perfect. All right. Now that's based off the left stick. So as you see, it's so we obviously we need to fix a few things up. I guess we just gotta play with it until we're relatively satisfied with it, right? I almost feel like it should be snappier and how it goes. Like the far distance is nice, right? Like having this say at 20 is all good and that. But I think this guy should be snappier. Just a little bit. He doesn't need to go crazy. The other thing is, it would be kind of nice. I don't know if he'll be a good idea, but let's give it a whirl. Let's make it so he goes a little farther out of bounds. And we can just up that guy. If I was smart, I would have changed it so he's on a different control. Yeah, you know, he needs to slow down his snappiness a bit. The extra distance actually isn't that bad though. I think I could go a little less. Maybe something like that. And let's change his float depth. Let's go 0.4. So he's just slightly snappier than the ship. Alright, so there's that. Now the other thing is, I also don't want, because I'm using the stick, I'm going to swap this over and go right stick. So the right stick needs right stick value. So we would need, obviously, to convert. So if we're not using the axis vector, convert vector 2 to vector 3. That one might be on the ecosystem. Right, that to, oh, not world position, to the input value. Every frame, Z is, oh no, we don't want that because we actually, no, yeah, we do. That's fine. Z can be 0. Usually those things would have options on what axes you're going to do. Right, so now we have I can move him around differently, which kind of feels kind of neat. He's going excessively far though. That's way too far. Way too far now that I've got it on different axes. But we're not multiplying it, right? And that's kind of one of the biggest things right there, is we need vector, I guess it really doesn't matter, vector 2 multiply or vector 3 multiply, and we have 2 vectors to multiply there that we could use. So, and we just want to move it, because before with the other one, the axis vectors, it had the multiplier in it. This one doesn't. So we can now adjust it right there. So now he's not going to turn all crazy wide. Right, so that's as far as he can go now. Now maybe that's too far. You know? And we could just bring that down. Right? I could say, you know, like 0.3 maybe. Might have a better feel like that maybe. Maybe 0.25. We don't want to go down too far if that's our aiming thing, right? Because we want to have that wide range of shooting. But yeah, let's say 0.3. 0.33. Third of the screen. How about that? The beauty part is doing it this way. It doesn't matter if you switch screens or switch resolutions, switch devices. The sizing of that's always going to be bang on. And see, that's pretty good, I think. So then it's just a matter of, you know, shooting missiles. I could probably put a little bit of camera movement to it. That might make it feel nice as well, right? And the camera, you don't want much. Right, like we could clamp position of self space. You know, it doesn't need to travel very far. Maybe a 1.5 range. That's in meters, which probably would need to be even less because we are, because all the units are scaled down. But we'll give it a whirl, right? And we can just transform. Yeah, transform point. And move towards. Unless move towards has the options. So we want to move towards the ship. But we don't want to target position. Now, does that give me an offset option? Because, like, so sometimes they do that, right? Move towards 2 and advance. See if they have the offsets. He doesn't say. No. So this is why I brought in the transform point, just in case. So if we transform point of the ship on -7, because what the transform point does is looks at whatever you're looking at. We're saying, okay, we're going to go that ship's local -7 position, regardless of whichever way that ship is facing, moving, doing whatever. His local -7 backwards 7. That's what this is giving us. Is going to end up being our target position. And our max speed, we don't want it very fast. We just want this to be more of a subtle thing, right? Like the camera doesn't need to do crazy tricks and stuff like that. And that should give us just a touch of feeling. Now we could also adjust the camera's look as well. But now the camera will just move just a bit. Like it doesn't got to be, like I said, it doesn't got to be crazy. Could probably go a little more. Obviously we don't have collisions, but you know. You know, my path is a little messy there, I suppose, but works pretty damn good. Let's give that just a little more speed. Just a 1.5 even. Just a touch. What else can we do with that? Let's add, just really quickly. I made a folder, I'm sure of it. Let's create a new material. Alright, so there's a laser. He could probably be a trigger. And laser color, let's go emissive. Let's go crazy red. You know what would make that look really cool is if we brought in post-processing volume and for that. Take that clamp up a little bit. There we go, and let's make this guy much smaller. Let's go 0.25s. Alright, so let's add him a FSM, and we could just translate. You could always use physics if you wanted to go a little quicker. That might be fast enough. And bullet, prefab them. Go to the player, make a gun spot. Let's just move this up to like here and make another one here. Perfect. Gun system. We got our two cannons. Awesome. Up here we're just gonna add a very quick get. No, we have a gamepad, right? Gamepad. So we have a button event. Sure. So that would be the west button. So is pressed event shoot. We're going to shoot, and we're going to go over to a sequence event, and that's going to be cannon 1, cannon 2, or 23 apparently. Cool. So we're going to shoot, and if that's the case, we are going to set game object. Let's say this is our using cannon, and if we're using cannon 1, we can just drag in cannon 1. Finish. And copy and paste this. So if we're using cannon 2, we're using this guy. Now all the logic we can just do based off the variable. We don't have to double up our logic. So what do we got to do? We are going to create object. Let's just create our bullet at using cannon, and this is create bullet. That's just in case we need to adjust its looking direction, and let's just go back to the shoot. Obviously we don't normally play sound effects and various things. Oh, you know, I should put that on the trigger. That would have been cooler. Stupid buttons. Oh, all right, yeah, right. 'Cause that's the new input system. So the new input system, when you're doing stuff like that, it likes to calculate things on that frame, and it likes to maintain. So we're just going to say, okay, we have done our frame stuff. We're ready for the next frame. Off to a next frame event and continue on our journey. And there we should have. Oh man, that's crazy. I mean, it kind of looks cool, but it's not what we want. So let's see why that is firing off so rapidly. This next frame is pressed event. Oh, because it's right. You know what? We should have put a. We should put a not a next frame event. We should really just put a wait and call this one like our fire rate. You know, 0.15 or whatever. Now, if it'll fire at that. Probably adjust those cannon spots, but essentially. Alright, cool. Alright, so let's go and child the gun system to the ship so it's not moving, because that's weird. I'm actually going to drop those both down a little bit so it might look a little better there. The other thing we want to do is let's get these bullets to look at our target. Create a bullet, looks at target, don't worry about the vertical, not every frame, that's it, that's all it's got to do. Alright, so now we have, of course it'd be better with sound effects and stuff like that. So it would feel so much better with that attack not on the button but on the trigger. For it being a gamepad, anyways. My path needs to work so bad, but hey, it's working. It's working, and that's the key. That's what you want. Yes, you can go have a freezer. So, anyways, there is a rail shooter, or a basic controller for one, anyways. Right, and if you wanted to adjust and have boosts and speeds and stuff, really the only thing we got to adjust is, if we're going to boost, is this guy's speed up and down just a bit. You don't need much. And then the camera FOV, right? Boosting, braking kind of idea. So just a little bit of a mix of those two, and you have a pretty nice system. So, but like I said, I should have totally thrown that attack on the trigger instead of the, especially like this, like trying to shoot where you're aiming, like you're holding it like that. Like, what the fuck? Totally would have felt better on the trigger. So, anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. So it's kind of more of a minor thing. Should be fairly light. My path sucks, but hey, I'm sure you guys will do better.